Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Steve Lowell, award-winning global speaker. Please enjoy Steve Lowell. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I am super excited today to chat with Steve Lowell, award-winning global speaker. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mari. Thanks for asking me. It's good to be here.
I'm super excited to have you and to chat about creativity. But first, if you would share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm a global speaker. I've been speaking on the live stage since the age of 6. Now, that is like 54 years ago now. And through that time, I became a high-end speaker coach and a speaker mentor. And I travel the world and I speak at conventions and conferences and hold my own events. But primarily out of all of that, what I do is I help other experts, coaches, speakers, trainers, authors, consultants, thought leaders. I help them apply creativity to their messaging so that they can stand out in their market. Because a lot of people have these great stories, Mari. You've heard a lot of them, I'm sure. And they want to bring these stories to the world, but a lot of them really struggle to put it together in a way that the world will receive those stories. So I help them be more creative in how they do that.
I love it. I mean, I'm all about creativity here. And I love that as a global speaker and mentor and trainer, that you too get to incorporate creativity into your career and profession and share it with other people. I think that's the most exciting thing, to get to share it with others.
Well, it's a big part of what we do in the speaking business, because we're all trying to appear to be different from everybody else who does what we do. And so the ones that really stand out, not just in the speaking business, but in any kind of business, the one that stands out is the one who's able to find a creative approach to whatever it is they're doing so that they don't look and sound the same as everybody else who does what they do.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's the joy of creativity. We get to be different and get to flex creativity in new and unique ways. When you think about creativity, what does it mean to you to be creative?
Right. And, my head is buried in my business. And so, that's kind of where I live. And before I was full-time speaking, I was a musician. So my head was buried, in that business. And so the creativity for me always manifests itself in something having to do with my business. And I know for a lot of people that might sound kind of boring, but my business, I'm one of those people, Mari, where my business comes from my soul. It's what I live for. And so that's where my creativity thrives. And so when I think about creativity, my mind just goes to, what can I do that's creative in my business today?
I love it. Yeah. And what you were talking about, your soul thriving or business thriving, doing something, it sounds like that you're incredibly passionate about. And what a gift to be able to have a career that you are so passionate about, that fuels you and incorporates so much creativity. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's true. I'm very, very blessed, and I'm very, I'm very grateful that I'm able to do this. And I meet people all over the world all the time who could do this. There are so many amazing people out there, and I know you've met many of them, and I've listened to many episodes of your podcast, and you've interviewed many of them, and they've got amazing ideas for creativity. But there are so many out there who just never allow themselves to express their creativity for whatever reason. They live in some sort of a compressed condition, or they live in some sort of a lifestyle that doesn't allow for them to release themselves. And so there's all of these stories that never come out. There's all this wisdom and creativity and passion that is never really released. And it's sad, and I meet a lot of those people, and a lot of them are my clients, and they come to me because it's time for them to release that which they've been carrying sometimes their whole lives.
So how do you support someone to share their story or step onto the stage, in air quotes, and literally onto the stage as a speaker, and share their passion and share their creativity?
So one of the things that I've found that holds people back from expressing their creativity is fear. And it's fear of judgment. It's that they don't trust themselves. Maybe they don't think their ideas are worthy. They might not have a self-image that allows them to express themselves. So the first thing I try and do is to give people permission to be themselves, and give people permission to release what's inside. And what I've found is, and maybe you found this too, I'm sure you have, Mari, is that once you sort of pop the cork and you let it come out a little bit, you can feel how safe it is, and you can feel how exhilarating it can be. And then the creativity feeds off itself. So the first thing I try and do with people is pop the cork, is to give them and put them into an environment where they can express themselves, even for a moment, freely enough that they can receive some accolades about that. They can receive some recognition, and they can recognize for themselves that it's actually safe to express their creativity, and it's invigorating, and it's all the things it should be, as soon as they get past the fear. So fear is the first thing. And then the second thing I do is I try and guide them to think deeper than they ever have before, because creativity, isn't usually found at the surface. If the thinking is always very superficial, creativity has a hard time creeping through. And so I try and get them to feel what it's like to think past the obvious, go from the common sense into the uncommon sense, and dig deeper than they may have ever gone before. And once they learn that what it feels like to do that, then ideas seem to sort of percolate from the top. So it kind of starts there. And then down the road, I help them craft it into a message they can bring and so forth. But the creativity piece is first about having them give themselves permission. And then number two is teaching them how to go deeper than they typically would.
I love it. I love hearing you talk about safety. I love hearing you talk about that subconscious mind space, or that deeper thought space, because those to me are cornerstones of creativity, and safety to me is the foundation of creativity. We can't take creative risk if we don't feel safe. And
That's it.
That I love hearing that other people in other industries are utilizing these same pieces of creativity and support as well. It's awesome. Now, good. I imagine that not every coaching session or speaker that you come across is always, ready to rock and roll.
No,
come up against some creative challenges. But also, I imagine in your own life, you've experienced challenges. What are some of the creative challenges you have experienced, and how do you face them?
So one of the things I've learned about me, and I don't know if this is the same for a lot of people, but for me, it's kind of like this. If I have to sit down, if I say, okay, today I'm going to be creative, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to create something. It never happens, right? But then, of course, what'll happen is at 2:00 in the morning, boom, it's going to come to me, and I'll, bounce out of bed. So a lot of times, these ideas that I use in my business, they come to me at the strangest times, and I wish I was proactive enough to write them all down when they come up, because I'll bet you that I've only been able to capture about 5% of the things that come, and the rest is kind of off in oblivion. So for me, what I have to try and do is just be aware and accept the fact that for me, creativity descends on its own time. Creativity doesn't arrive because I ask it to. And I need to be ready to respond when creativity presents itself at any time. And sometimes that just means stopping what I'm doing and grabbing my iPad and writing some notes, or sometimes it means going to the computer and creating something, and I got to get it out before I lose it. So it's kind of a scattered thing. And I have yet to learn how to control that type of, that type of scenario where it just sort of shows up. And so that's what I've learned. But with others, I've learned with others that sometimes it can be coaxed out. So what I mean by that is this: I'll do these events, and I've been doing them forever and ever. And I'll do an event, and my job is to bring up volunteers literally onto the stage in front of an audience of 100 people or 500 people. And they'll come up on the stage, and my job is to help them become better speakers. Now they volunteer for this, and I think they're all crazy, but they do. They volunteer for this, and they come up on the stage. And what'll happen is I will see something in them that they can't see. And I get a little bit relentless in trying to yank it out of them. And so, they'll be speaking, telling a story, and I'll stop and interrupt, and I'll say, no, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. And you got more than you got more. And sometimes I get them right to the edge of frustration, and then all of a sudden, boom, it always happens. They open up, and all of this great stuff comes out of them that they never knew existed. They never even knew it was there. And once they've done it once they feel what it's like to have it coaxed out of them, then they can coax it out of themselves, and they can allow it to flow from themselves. And for a lot of people, I find that creativity is about allowing it to flow, or depending on your perspective, allowing it to descend. Because some people feel like it comes from within. Some people feel like it's channeled, or it's handed to them, or it's a gift from the external. And I think all of those are true. I think the source of creativity comes from multiple directions. And what we need to do is we need to be able to receive from all directions, whether it's coming from within, whether it's being delivered or channeled, however we feel it's descending upon us or coming through us. We need to be prepared to receive it and then act on it. So for me, I have to let it descend. I have to let it appear somewhere. For others, I think it can be coaxed out.
Yeah, I love that kind of menu of how creativity can show up. That here it could be channeled, or come from internal or external, or inspired by so many different things. And inspiration, is such a huge, it's a large umbrella, inspiration. But when you think about being inspired, who or what are the pieces or people that inspire you in your life these days?
That's an excellent question, because it does change. Well, let me think about that. I was going to say that it changes, but I don't think, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it actually does change. I think what happens is I just sort of step from one avenue to the next, and then back again. So some of the ways that I get inspired are through music, oftentimes. I have a certain genre of music that I just, that really engages me. And as a former musician, I've got that genre. So when I listen to that music, I find that inspiring. I live in a rural area on a beautiful river, and my wife and I have a boat, and we go down the river in the summertime often. And the scenery is magnificent. So when I'm in that space, I get very inspired in that space. And then sometimes I'll be doing just something totally random. I'll be watching a movie, or, going for a walk or something. And then boom, it just sort of comes. And then other times it doesn't. I look for inspiration. I can't find it. Sometimes it happens for prolonged periods of time where nothing just appears. But music will inspire me. Being on the river with my wife on the boat inspires me. And those are the two big ways that I get inspired now, I think.
Nice. I love that. I too, music is a big inspiration source for me as well. When you struggle to be inspired, or have those periods where inspiration isn't coming as easily, how do you navigate that?
Right. I just stop forcing it. I bring logic into the equation. I kind of think it's not coming right now, but it always comes. And so I'm going to relinquish control and give myself permission just to allow life to happen and put myself in a position of receiving rather than creating. And then ultimately it always arrives it one way or another at some point. And it doesn't happen right away. Sometimes it takes an awful long time, but it always arrives. And so I just have to trust in that it's always going to be delivered one way or the other at its own time.
That's a great reminder and a good tip to kind of reframe things for ourselves, and how to trust the process, if you will, creative process, inspiration process. Yeah. As someone who has been performing or on stage since an early age of 6, as you mentioned, what's your earliest memory of being creative?
I'll try to explain it this way. I have this very strange energy that I've had my whole life. And I would tell my friends and family, my girlfriends and my wife about that and all the people, and they would never believe me until they see it happen. And the strange energy is this. The strange energy is that I break things. When I walk into a room, electronics stop working, lights go off, microphones go dead,
Yep.
and it's happened all my life. I reach out and touch something, it's broken. That's just the way it is. So all of that to say this, when I was much younger and I was a little boy at 6 years old, I was a guitar player. I was playing guitar and I got invited to play at the school. I was in grade 1 or something, and they wanted me, somebody heard me play and they wanted me to go on a stage and play. So I went on the stage, and as soon as I started to play, I broke a guitar string. Now, that's just me. I mean, the string broke. Now I can't play properly. So what am I going to do? And so I remember having to change the song I was playing so that I could play the song on the remaining 5 strings without having to worry about the 6th string. And, if you're a musician, or especially if you're a guitar player, you'll appreciate that. When you lose a string, it's really difficult to compensate for that.
Yeah.
But at age 6, I was just kind of able to do that. And what happened was I was able to play, and nobody realized that I had broken the string except for me. So that was a decent skill that I had acquired over the years as I became a professional musician and playing, at some venues with lots of people in them. I broke strings 2-3 times a night. My microphone would stop working. Things would just stop working when I'm around. And I had to learn how to compensate for those creatively. I'll give you an example. So this is as a speaker now. I got introduced as a speaker. I was the main stage speaker, and I walked out. And in some of these venues, the stages are pieces that are put together, right? Yeah. And there's 4 or 5 or 6 pieces put together, and there's cracks between them. And so I walked out onto the stage after being introduced, and one of the cracks, the partitions, was right in the middle of the stage. And whoever put the stage together didn't lock the wheels of the platform pieces. And as soon as I stepped on it, the stage opened up and my leg went right through the crack in the middle of the stage. So I'm standing there, if you can picture this, I'm standing there on the stage, with one foot right through the crack and the other leg bent. And so I'm standing on the stage with 1 foot right through the crack. I hadn't said anything yet. I'd just been introduced. I hadn't said anything yet. And so because I got, over the years, I got good at handling impromptu situations, what came to me was this: don't mind me. It's just a stage I'm going through. Now that little strategy, I hadn't thought about that. It just sort of came to me out of the ether. And so over the years of having to deal with these kinds of technical problems all the time, it helped me develop this skill to impromptu get out of these situations. And I think that's a good use of creativity when you're me,
Absolutely. And it sounds like something that continues to show up in your life, that from childhood you've continued to trust that if something happens, you can navigate it. The improvisation is available and it will work.
Yeah, it happened last week. I was speaking on a virtual summit, and there were 30 speakers or something. And, and when it came my turn to speak, they put me on, and my mic or my camera stopped working. As soon as they introduced me, the camera stopped working. I have no idea why it stopped working. I still don't know why it stopped working. But the problem is that I have all of this technology when I present that, and none of it was going to work. And my presentation was visual. I use a flip chart. I use all these things, and now they can't see me. And so out of all the speakers, I was the only one who spoke in blackness, right? So what I had to do was change the entire presentation.
Oh my goodness.
On the blink of an eye. So, and you have to make it appear that it's exactly what was supposed to happen. And so it still happens to this day. I tell people this, Mari, I say, I'd have to lie to you because you'd never believe the truth. But anyway, so creativity has served me in that way.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I mean, the everyday things that you're navigating and
Mm.
how to incorporate creativity or how you use creative solutions in solving those problems. How about in other areas of your life when you're not in like career or profession?
Mhm.
What are some everyday challenges that you face that you use creativity to solve?
That's an excellent question. I think the first one that comes to mind is dealing with my grandkids. I've got three grandchildren, all of them very young,
Mhm.
all of them very different personalities.
Mm.
And I'm learning, I mean, I'm a parent as well, obviously, but I'm learning with these three grandchildren that when I'm with them, I have to be creative in terms of how I engage them. Like, how do I make them laugh? Because one of them, you can make them laugh one way, the other one, not a prayer. You know, one of them
Yeah.
wants to build Lego castles and the other wants to snuggle and watch TV. And so I have to be creative at how I engage them when we're all together. So
Mhm.
that's the first thing that comes to mind, because I find that difficult.
Yeah.
And so I have to work at that, because I don't want to be the grandpa that never talks to them and never,
Right.
the visual you get of the old grandpa sitting on the couch that never talks to them, right?
Yeah.
Never does. I
Yeah.
don't want to be that guy. And so I have to
Yeah.
find creative ways to keep them interested, keep them engaged, and, keep them happy. And so that's the most immediate one that comes to mind, I think.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're also employing some of your skills as a speaker, that you teach other people of how to engage others with your story. I don't know. I just putting those pieces
Well,
together.
yeah, I think there is a parallel there, because I have to, I find that I have to think fast with these kids.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I'm making it sound like it's a really big, difficult scientific experiment, but for me, it kind of is, because
Yeah.
I'm not naturally drawn to, the company of young children. It's not
Mhm.
that I don't like them. I'm not really comfortable in that environment, right? And so I
Yeah.
have to find creative ways to be comfortable
Right.
in that environment, and I work hard at that. But I love it. I've been, it's teaching me a lot. It's teaching me a lot about myself, and it's reminding me how precious these children are and how important it is that they have role models at different areas in their life. And I try and be a
Mhm.
role model for them. So, at least in one area. So I try and be creative about that. What
Yeah.
can I do that makes me different than everybody else in their life? What can I do that
Mm.
plants a good memory for them? What can I do with them that serves them in some way? What can I do with them that helps their own development? What can I do with them that helps them generate their own creativity? So I'd like to be the sort of grandfather that they can look back on and they can say, yeah, grandpa taught me that.
Mm-hmm. I love all the questions that you're asking yourself in support of them. I think that the curiosity of how can I do this? How can I introduce them to new things is also part of creativity and holding that curiosity with people, children you may not always feel the most comfortable around or connect with. And I think that can, translate into other areas. But what a beautiful way to bring creativity into your relationship with your grandchildren, I think.
One of the things I've learned, and my wife Jane taught me this, is um, she taught me how to approach life from a position of service. And so
Mm-hmm.
within all of our community, and we have a global community of, of clients and colleagues and friends and buddies all over the world. And when we're engaging that community, what I try and do now is I try and position myself as how can I serve? And, I'm the president of the Global Speakers Federation, and which is it's kind of a big thing. It's taken me 12 years to get there.
Yeah.
But I got there through all different paths, all different channels that I had to go through. But all of it was from the standpoint of how can I serve? How can I serve this community?
Mm-hmm.
And so I take the same approach with my grandkids most of the time. Sometimes my approach is, man, I got to get out of here and just, I got to go
serve myself.
serve myself, right, from time to time. But, I try and approach things from how can I serve? And the reason why this is important to our conversation about creativity is because what I've found is that if I approach something from particularly other people, if I approach a person or a group from the standpoint of a mindset of how can I serve, how can I contribute,
Mm-hmm.
that tends to start the creative wheels turning, because I'm not sure why, but I think sort of what happens is when I position myself in a mindset of service, creativity sort of comes to me in terms of ways that I can be altruistic and in ways that I can contribute, in ways that I can serve. And I find that safe. And then once that starts, I start getting some ideas for myself, but oftentimes it starts with, how can I serve? How can I contribute to this person or this group or this cause?
Yeah, I love that. Great reminders on, get out of our own way, see how we can support or serve others. And then in that process, more creativity will show up for us in attending to the things that we want to do too. When you come across or experience people who don't feel that they're creative, as I imagine you probably do, how would you encourage others to find creativity in their lives?
So there are some people who just either literally aren't creative or are just too closed to be creative. So I know some people, and again, Mara, you meet so many people, and I'm sure you've met people who, that they have more than what they're exhibiting.
Sure.
They are more than what they have become.
Yeah.
And yet some are just so closed to even exploring the possibility that there might be more.
Right.
So with people who are in that state, I don't feel like I can help them, and I don't feel like I do what I can to encourage, but I can get a sense, I think, when somebody is just closed. So when somebody is just closed, in my judgment is they're, I'm not equipped, to try and open them if they're closed and if they're locked. The people I can serve and I can help are the ones who want to become more creative. And they don't come to me and they say, hey, Steve, I wish I was more creative.
Right.
They come to me with a desired outcome. They'll come and they'll say, Steve, I want to sell more of my books. I want to get more speaking engagements. I want to make more money. I want to do this. And so because they have a desired outcome, that makes it easier for me to guide them in terms of how they can apply a more creative approach because they have a reason to. So for a lot of people, what I find is the act or art of being creative isn't always enough for them to be creative. They need to have a purpose to be creative. And so if I can position it in a way that, look, you've got this desired outcome, you want to sell more books, you want to be, become a speaker, you want to get paid more money, you want to have more success, so whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, if I can position the fact that it's, you need to open up your creative channels in order to make that outcome happen. And so now it's a choice between either you want to achieve the outcome or you don't. And if you want to achieve the outcome, you're going to need to open up some creative channels. And I'm the guy that's going to help you to do that. So I use the inducement of the desired outcome to try and encourage people to allow themselves to become open and allow themselves to receive that creativity from whatever channel it chooses to arrive.
Nice. I like it. Yeah. There is something to be said for someone who is open or willing to try new things, get a little goofy or silly, get out of their comfort zone, where creativity really comes alive. So yeah, I understand working with people who are willing to try new things is very different and much easier than someone who is closed off and not willing to or not interested. So, well, this has been such a treat to chat with you. I have one last question.
Sure.
What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
It's a burst of energy. When that creativity, when it descends or arrives or however it shows up, I have to stop. I almost become dysfunctional in everything else. There's an energy that happens in me that almost demands immediate action. And so that's why I need to have something that I can write on, something that I can doodle on, at almost every moment of the day, because if I don't, I get that creative energy. And then what happens is it turns into frustration because I know it's going to be gone. And what I try to do is say, I'm not going to forget this one. I'm not going to forget. I'm not going to forget. We do that, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to remember this. I'm going to remember this. I'll tell my wife, remind me about this, So it's this like this amazing energy that I get that requires something to happen immediately. And that's the only way I can describe it, is that it's this very hard driving, immediate energy.
I love it. I love hearing people's experience of being creative, or their embodiment of being creative, because it's so different and so unique and so much fun for me to hear and have my mirror neurons get sparked of like, oh yeah, I remember that. I feel that too. I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. And if people want to learn more about the things you do, how could they go about doing that?
Well, the best way to find out more about me is just to go to my website at stevelowell.com. Everything I do is there. There are, I work mostly with professional speakers, aspiring speakers at the professional level, nonfiction authors, coaches, trainers, consultants, entrepreneurs. And so there's lots of things there that will help you. There's some free webinars there. There's, some really great content there that will help you apply creativity in your business or in your life to help you elevate your performance so that you can become more of who you were actually meant to be. So go to stevelowell.com. It's all right there.
Perfect. I love it. I'll add that to the show notes. And thank you again for taking the time to chat with me about creativity. It's been such a treat.
It has. Well, thanks for asking me, Mari. I hope we'll do it again sometime.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.